All right, folks, attention, please. My name is Hatem Abudayyeh, Hatem, last name Abudayyeh. I'm a spokesperson for the Coalition to March on the DNC, and I'm the national chair for the United States Palestinian Community Network. The coalition was established last summer when we began our organizing in preparation to lead the protests at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago this August. But everything changed in October last year. And now the March on the DNC will be the largest mobilization for Palestine in the history of this city. Yeah. You'll hear more later about the rejection of our march permits by the city, the violation of our constitutional rights, and our federal lawsuit in response. But we'll be marching with or without permits. Because this DNC is the most important one since 1968. Also in Chicago, when Vietnam War protesters and the Black Liberation Movement organized mass demonstrations that were violently repressed by Mayor Daley the Elder and his goon squad of Chicago cops and feds. In August, we expect tens of thousands of Palestinian, Arab, Black, Latinx, Asian, and other protesters from all across the U.S. to say loud and clear to genocide Joe Biden, killer Kamala, and their cabal. Stop U.S. aid to Israel. Stop arming Israel. We stand with Palestine, and we support victory and liberation for the Palestinian people. To our targeting of the DNC because the Israeli perpetrated genocide that has already killed almost 35,000 Palestinians in Gaza has been brought to us and been paid for by the U.S. government, specifically by Biden and the Democratic Party. We all know that Israel's war crimes are not possible without U.S. weapons, money, and political and diplomatic support. And even though the majority of people in the United States want Israel to stop the killing, Biden continues to allow it unabated. That's why the Palestine support movement in this country is mobilizing like never before, shutting down streets and highways and airports and legislators' offices, and why Biden is in big, big trouble this November. He could have stopped this genocide back in October. He could stop it now, but he won't, because that's what empire does. Destroys, kills, steals, and devastates developing nations across the world for its own economic interests. Israel kills with impunity because Biden and the Democrats allow it to. The focus of our coalition and the protests in August is Palestine, yes. But this conference has folks here from all across the U.S., representing all the social sectors and movements who want the Democrats to be accountable to the communities that have always gotten them elected, especially immigrant rights, Black liberation, reproductive rights, LGBTQ rights, and students. They will all address their issues today, pledge their support for Palestine liberation, and make concrete plans for the historic march on the DNC. Thank you. So I'm going to introduce our incredible panel of speakers here, and then I'll come back and I'll chair a Q&A for the print reporters here. Our first speaker is Kobe Guillory, co-chair of the Black-led Chicago Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression, which is the lead organization in the coalition to march on the DNC. And he's also one of the primary spokespeople for the coalition. Kobe Guillory.
Thank you, Hatem, and thank you everybody who's here. Real quick, before I get into what I wrote down, I wanted to just start with a couple chants. So Dexter Reed was murdered by the Chicago Police Department a few weeks ago. A video of that lynching came out on Tuesday. So I just wanted to, I'm going to say his name, and y'all are going to say Dexter Reed. Say his name!
Dexter Reed!
Say his name!
Dexter Reed!
Say his name!
Dexter Reed!
And, you know, it's important to connect all these issues because the same system that took the life of Dexter Reed, George Floyd, and Breonna Taylor is the same system that is committing genocide in Palestine. And, you know, the Chicago Alliance, we condemn in the strongest, most unequivocal terms, we condemn the genocide that is being committed in Gaza by this current administration. We know that Genocide Joe, Killer Kamala, and all these fake progressive war criminals in the Democratic Party are just as guilty as Netanyahu. So because of that, we're going to counter-protest the DNC starting on August 19th, ending on August 22nd. We're demanding an immediate end to the US-backed Israeli genocide. We're demanding that no more of our tax dollars are used to fund the massacres of Palestinians. We're also demanding an end to police crimes and community control of the police. We're demanding immigrants' rights and legalization for all. We're demanding reproductive and LGBTQ rights. We are demanding workers' rights to unionize and strike. And we are demanding money for jobs, schools, housing, healthcare, and the environment, and not for war. And all of those are united by the demand for justice, peace, and equality. And we're going to bring these demands to within sight and sound of the Democratic Party. We filed permits to ensure that protesters would not be attacked by the police like what happened in 1968, what happened in 2012 when the NATO conference was held in Chicago. Our applications to march on the 19th and the 22nd were denied by the city because, of course, the city works for the ruling class that does not want to hear from us. But we are taking the city to court. We're suing them in federal court, and we're going to win that permit. But just like Hatem said, we will not be moved by the city. We will not be moved by the state. We will not be moved by the federal government. We are going to march with or without a permit. And so we're building this march. And this conference is going to be a turning point, turning the organizing from something that has been done locally here in Chicago to something that is a national affair. We're building this event nationally. And we're going to have, like Hatem just said, we're going to have tens of thousands of people of all ages, races, genders, and nationalities united in the fight for justice. You're going to see today that all the people's movements stand with Palestine. We've seen that solidarity in relentless protests of millions of people around the country since October and around the world. We're going to see that same solidarity at this conference. That's what's going to build this march to an earth-shaking, history-making mobilization in August. All power to the people!
All power to the people!
Thank you, Kobe. Kobe's K-O-B-I, last name G-U-I-L-L-O-R-Y. Marisol Marquez, M-A-R-I-S-O-L, M-A-R-Q-U-E-Z, is a leader of one of Southern California's most important Chicano organizations, Centro CSO, and also a national leader of the Immigrant Rights Project, Legalization for All. Marisol.
Hi everyone, good morning. I come from Los Angeles to say that we stand with the Palestinian people who are being genocided on, and the Democrats are definitely complicit in this genocide. I come from LA and the state of California that is predominantly Democratic, but we understand that, like Genocide Joe Biden, a lot isn't being done to prevent a genocide that can be completely preventable. So in LA, we've actually been dealing a lot with this question. How do we show our solidarity for the people of Palestine? And I know that there were friends from Chicago who were helping us, but we did disrupt a Hollywood, very famous party known as the Oscars. Woo! And while we are not Palestinian, we definitely definitely, as Chicanos, we understand that the U.S. is very much complicit and a leader of attacks on our people who are oppressed, like the Palestinians in Palestine. And it will forever be Palestine. We in LA have also been dealing with our own militarized area and reality at the U.S.-Mexico border. Greg Abbott, who is the governor of Texas, has been sending a bunch of buses of people who are undocumented or seeking asylum seeker refugees from Texas all around the democratic cities that he thinks deserve to have these poor people who are trying to get a better life. In Los Angeles, we have received 28 of these buses since the whole refugee situation has been going on. That's 955 asylum seekers. These are people who are pregnant. These are people who are unaccompanied minors, seniors, and most of them just trying to survive. People from Guatemala, Cuba, Nicaragua, Mexico, Colombia, Iran, and Venezuela. All of these people are now in Los Angeles and in various other cities, including Chicago. And what have the Democrats done to try to prevent this from happening further at the U.S.-Mexico border? That's right, nothing. And also, Biden was just in Brownsville, Texas on February 26th to look at the situation. And what he recommended was that Congress take action, that they pass an immigration bill and expedite legitimate asylum claims. Legitimate.
Ooh.
An unaccompanied minor needs to have a legitimate reason to be here. A pregnant mother needs to have a legitimate reason to be here. To that we say shame.
Shame.
So we are obviously in solidarity with the people of Palestine and also the people who are currently living in a militarized zone at the U.S.-Mexico border. A public park known as Shelby Park, which used to be one of the only places where people who are working class, and in Eagle Pass, Texas, they're mostly working class people. It's a very small community. And the park has been overtaken by the actual Texas National Guard. It is no longer a park where you can have a barbecue. It is now the zone where they just observe people drowning trying to cross into the U.S. They witnessed 3 people as soon as they set up shop, and they actually prevented the U.S. Border Patrol from rendering them aid. You had a federal entity and a state entity fighting over whether they should go save these 3 people, and they died. A mother and her 2 children. That is unacceptable. And yet we have Biden saying that, you know, they need to have a legitimate reason for what? For dying at the U.S. border? So we are all for legalization for all, and because the people of Los Angeles stand very much in solidarity with the people of Palestine, we will be mobilizing to come to the DNC to protest it in August. We are currently doing a contingent of immigrants' rights people, and we've already gotten quite a bit of interest from people in Los Angeles to travel for the August convention. So you will count on our support. Chicano people stand in solidarity with Palestine and all of you in Chicago. Thank you.
Maggie Lugo, M-A-G-G-I-E-L-U-G-O, is the executive director of the Chicago-based Federation of Michoacan Clubs, which provides immigrant services and is a leading member of another supporter of the DNC protests, the largest coalition for immigrant rights in the state, the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights. Please welcome Maggie Lugo.
Clearly prove that when people feel attacked, what do we do best? We organize and what? Fight back. What do we do best?
Fight back.
What do we do best?
Fight back.
That's exactly what we're intending to do this August. You know, Democrats come out and look for our vote every 4 years, promising fake news, promising things that they're not going to be able to make happen. But us as immigrants, as members of the Palestinian community, as people, asylum seekers, as DACA recipients like myself, we know our rights. We know that what we're looking for is not just to fit into a box. What we're looking for is the right to live a life with dignity. We come to the U.S., we work hard. We don't take things for granted. So why are the Democrats taking us for granted? Biden, the genocide that you're doing, the Biden administration, the whole Democratic Party, you're screwing yourself over. Because the one voters, the one people throughout the nation that goes and knocks on the doors, they're not going to do that this time. What we're going to do is go knock on your door and let you hear that we matter. We contribute to this country, whether we're immigrants, Palestinians, Nicaraguans, Venezuelans. We know that as humans, we have rights. And this August, we're going to fight for it. Are we ready to fight?
Yeah.
So, given that, on the name of a lot of DACA recipients, on the name of so many undocumented families, we are asking that we fight back for legalization for all, for dignity for our Palestinian community, and for one thing that matters, dignity for all. So let's make this happen, because the people united will never be defeated. People united
Will never be defeated.
We'll see everybody in August, because we're going to knock those damn doors.
Thank you, ma'am. Meredith Abbey, Meredithaby, is a longtime leader of the Minnesota Anti-War Committee and has been organizing in solidarity with Palestine for decades. Over 24 Minnesotans, as I've been told, are here for this conference, and hundreds more will be mobilized for the DNC. Please welcome Meredith.
We are really excited to be here in Chicago because Minnesota, just like Chicago, has been protesting weekly, sometimes multiple times per week, for over 6 months to say no to Genocide Joe's support of Israel. Right. And that is important. We've been taking our message to the streets. But in Minnesota, we cannot turn down the opportunities when we get them to go take our message directly to Genocide Joe himself. In November, on less than a week's notice, we managed to organize a busload of people to go all the way to D.C. to take our message to the White House. And people were really motivated about that. And so the DNC should know it's going to be a lot easier to organize a lot of buses on this type of notice. Chicago's a lot closer than D.C. is. We're going to get so many people from Minnesota over here because we have the opportunity to take our message to the Democratic Party and to Genocide Joe himself to say that we do not want this blood on our hands. We are not interested in paying for, facilitating for this genocide. This is not something that we want. And how dare he come and ask for our vote when he's been literally killing our Palestinian siblings day after day after day. That is outrageous. Minnesotans are frustrated. They are angry, and they are showing up in the streets, and they are showing their frustration with the Biden administration. And it is at his own peril if he ignores our frustration. Minnesota got 19% of the vote to say uncommitted. We showed up when he was there trying to raise money in December. We showed up when Kamala Harris was there trying to change the topic to talk about abortion. We were there being like, what about reproductive rights for Palestinians?
That's right.
But the fact is that every time we get the opportunity to stick it to Biden, we are. 5 Minnesota cities, including Minneapolis and St. Paul, have all passed ceasefire resolutions. This is something Minnesota feels very strongly about. I see people here from all over the Midwest. I see people from Wisconsin. I see people from Michigan. It's not just Minnesotans who are in this room. And so I see people from Ohio. And so the fact is that we are going to be here in August. We are going to be loud. We're going to bring the communities that are affected by Democratic policies, and we are going to make them realize that, you know what, they do not get to ask us for our vote. What they should be instead doing is asking for forgiveness. Because we are frustrated and angry, and he has blood on his hands, and we will be there in August, and we will be there on the streets between now and then to say shame on the Biden administration for killing so many innocent innocent people. I mean, really, this is atrocious. We are watching genocide in our lifetime, and we have a responsibility to act. And the people in this room at this conference this weekend, we are going to make it happen.
That's
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you, Meredith. And thanks to the entire panel. We wanted to be representative of this coalition with as many of the sectors represented here as possible and folks from outside of Chicago as well. We've got a lot of Midwesterners here. We got folks from outside of the Midwest as well. And we know we're going to have tens of thousands from all across the U.S. in August. So for the journalists that are here, the reporters that are here, I'm going to open up for questions right now.
Yeah, I wanted to get your thoughts, Hatem, and maybe Kobe and others about what was talked about at the City Council Public Safety Committee the other day, specifically about protests at the DNC. They mentioned this idea of having designated protest areas. Are you all familiar with this rhetoric that's being used, and do you have any reaction to that?
Did you hear anything about this? Yeah. Kobe will answer that.
So,
Can you repeat the question?
so the question was about having designated protest zones for the march on the DNC. And excuse my language, but that's some bullshit. Every organization, and we're not the only people who've applied for permits to march on that week. Every single organization who applied for permits got a copied and pasted letter from the Department of Transportation, basically saying, "Oh, we don't have the resources to police you. You know, we don't have the resources to police you and, you know, organize all these motorcades for these rich and powerful people who are coming into Chicago." Again, that's some bullshit, because they're telling us we need to go 4 miles away, which is nowhere near the United Center. Are we gonna let them put us 4 miles away from the United Center? No. Absolutely not. We're gonna get these permits. We are going to be within sight and sound of the DNC. We are not gonna be moved, like I said, and we are not going for any kind of compatible, convenient nonsense that the city is trying to make us do at the whims of the ruling class. We're not doing that.
Any others? Go ahead.
You mentioned still fighting the federal lawsuit. Are there any?
Can you lower the mask just for the question? Sorry.
You mentioned, you're confident in winning the federal lawsuit. Are you going to press Mayor Johnson in any other ways to try to get those permits, even though you said you're marching with your?
Yeah. So one of the things that the coalition is also doing.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. The question is that she mentioned that we say we're confident that we're going to win the federal lawsuit, and that even if we don't, we're still marching within sight and sound, as Kobe mentioned. But is there anything that we're asking the mayor to do as well? And so the coalition has, from the very moment that that the permit was rejected by the Department of Transportation, has initiated a campaign to reach out to the mayor and his administration and say that we know that he supports our constitutional rights. We know that he supports our right of free speech. We know that he voted for the ceasefire, broke the tie in the city council, the biggest city in the entire U.S., to vote for a ceasefire resolution. And we know that he's a community organizer and he came from the movement. So we're asking him and his administration directly to intercede here and to make sure that we get the permits to march within sight and sound of the United Center. And because he's a community organizer, he knows that he can also be a target of ours, a respectful target of ours, but we will ask him, and we will continue to ask him, and we will continue to press him and his office to make sure that they facilitate these marches and protests as well.
Just to add real quick, we have two petitions going around. One for individuals. If you go to bit.ly/demand DNC permit, you can write a letter to the Department of Transportation and to Mayor Johnson. Again, that's bit.ly/demand DNC permit. All one word, all lowercase. And there's also a petition for organizations and elected officials, and that petition is at bit.ly/DNC permit now. Again, bit.ly/DNC permit now. All lowercase, no numbers or any special characters.
I just wanted to make sure I clarified from earlier. I'm familiar with the suggestion from the city to march in Grant Park instead. And I meant the other day the CPD officials said that they are now planning to have designated areas for the public to assemble within the footprint of the United Center, and even floated the idea of people without protest permits being allowed to go there. Is that something that you all have, I don't know if you've had any communication with them on this, is that something that you believe that they're doing in good faith, or does that change, I guess, any plans?
This was discussed and determined just how long ago?
This was mentioned at the Public Safety Committee, City Council,
Okay.
the Public Safety Committee
Do
meeting
you
on
want to comment,
Thursday.
Maggie? Go ahead.
So as we know, this was brought last week as a comment, right? We still have to see what, but we know one thing for sure. The city can have a plan, but we, the people that are being directly affected and that we care about this, we're gonna be there. We're gonna be inside, we're gonna do what we have to say, and, but to answer your question directly, there hasn't been a clear plan from them, shared with any of us. So, as soon as we get that, we're gonna analyze it like we do, but that does not mean that we're not gonna be there. We're gonna be there with or without permit. And I think the city of Chicago knows that we organize, and we organize very well.
And I think Maggie's absolutely right, and I also think that if those recommendations do not put us within sight and sound, then I can't speak for the entire coalition right now on my own without being in that smoke-filled room that I'm in later on. But that we reject that. Our demand is within sight and sound. Our demand is for the permits. Our demand is to allow us to have the tens of thousands of people and their families and their children, and an opportunity for us to say, stand with Palestine, stop U.S. aid to Israel, and uphold our constitutional and free speech rights. Any other questions?
I have one more question.
Yeah.
What would your message be to anyone who says, is this possible for you to organize the marches without the...
One more time.
What would your message be to anyone who says this is possible to organize these marches without permits?
That it's possible to do, that it isn't possible to do without permits. You want to?
Can you repeat the question?
The question is, to what degree is it possible to do this even if we don't get permits? So in St. Paul in 2008, we organized the March on the RNC. And I don't know of a single national security event like this where you haven't had to sue and go to federal court in order to get a permit. The fact is that they don't want to give us rights that we don't demand. And so, the fact that there is a lawsuit and the fact that there is this sort of process of arguing for a permit is totally normal. I mean, it's happened in every single city that I know of that has had this type of national security event for a Republican or a Democratic National Convention. In 2008 in St. Paul, we had permits for some of our actions, and we didn't have permits for others of our actions. And in St. Paul, they really did try to get us to protest in a pen. And the fact is that if you bring enough people, you don't have to protest in the pen. And so I think the real answer is there's a large community manifestation of frustration and anger, and you have the opportunity to direct it at the leader who's not listening to you, you will get the opportunity to express that. And so I think that's important, is that if the people in this room want to make sure that we get as close as possible to Biden, what we need to do is bring us as many people as possible, because then it's going to be hard to keep us from being able to get close to them. But also at the end of the day, politicians only do what we make them do, right? And so, and if we show that we are going to be relentless in our ability to sort of go and take our message directly to Biden, they will have to let us take our message to Biden. And we know this from city after city after city that we have had these national security events at.
Just got a text to ask you that in light of the national pushback against Joe Biden and the support for Israel, the alternative is, of course, the Republican Party and Donald Trump. Are you confident that the Republican Party and Donald Trump will be able to align themselves with their cause?
No. Yes. So, in light of the fact that Biden is aligning with Israel and supporting and is complicit in the genocide, the possibility with the mass movement condemning him and the Democratic Party, possibility that Trump might win the election in November, and do we believe that he will be on our side? And the answer is obviously an unequivocal no. But Maggie mentioned it, Marisol mentioned it, we've all mentioned it. This Democratic Party has been taking black people, immigrants, queer people, workers, women in this country for granted for decades and decades. And when Hillary Clinton lost to Trump the first time, there was nobody that was responsible for that loss but Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party themselves. And if it turns out, because of what we saw in Minnesota and in Wisconsin and Illinois, where we said we were not going to vote for Genocide Joe, and people in Illinois, because we had a write-in option, we wrote in Gaza, and other people across the Midwest wrote in uncommitted. If it turns out that Biden loses this, he himself and his crew of warmongers and people in the administration who are complicit with the murders of 35,000. And remember, it's going to be way, way more than 35,000. There are probably at least 10 to 15,000 that are already underneath the rubble. And there are going to be tens of thousands more that will probably die of disease and of not having water and food and medicine and aid. Remember, the State Department the other day, just a month ago, said, we believe that Israel is not keeping aid, is allowing aid in. We believe that Israel is allowing aid in. And it has been proven by 30 humanitarian aid agencies, international, that are saying that Israel is keeping all the aid out, including the aid from the United States. The nerve of getting $5 billion of our tax dollars every year to Israel for military and other aid, and then the U.S. is trying to bring its own aid into Gaza, and Israel is keeping it out. So if Trump wins the election, if Biden loses the election, the only people responsible are the Democrats for allowing this genocide to happen. And if anybody thinks that a Republican administration or that the pig Donald Trump himself would have done anything different than Joe Biden has done in the past 6 months, then they're absolutely wrong. This is the worst that we could ever have imagined from any administration, Democrat or Republican. They do what they do. Frank Chapman always says, this is not an aberration. This is not something that we don't expect. This is what the empire does. This is what U.S. imperialism does. They don't care about 40,000 Palestinian lives. They don't care about 800,000 Rwandan lives. They don't care about 1 million Algerian lives. And they don't care about 3 million Vietnamese lives. But those last two examples are examples of people who were fighting for their freedom and their liberation from colonialism, settler colonialism, and U.S. imperialism, and they defeated them. They lost millions. They lost millions of martyrs. And we mourn every single one of those beautiful lives. They lost millions of martyrs, and they won their liberation. And the Palestinians, no matter how much we cry at night, no matter how much we watch those videos, no matter how much we see those pictures, and no matter how much we're paying attention every single minute of every day to a live stream genocide, every single Palestinian will say, it is a sacrifice that is worth it for us to win our liberation. Anything else? All right, and folks, here are spokespeople all. We have a couple other spokespeople. Olan is our press coordinator right there. So if any of you want to have more in-depth conversations with folks who are spokespeople for the coalition, please connect with Olan right there. Thank you all very much.